Welcome again to the second of our series of Google Plus Hangouts entitled Are You In, Are You Out? Join Youth In. These Hangouts are a series of online discussions that we're using to promote the portal youth-in.com and our Facebook, which is facebook.com/youthinnovation. These discussions are being streamed live, and we want to welcome you to this evening's topic, which is entitled Is Caribbean Politics an Old Man's Game? First of all, let me first give some apologies on behalf of one of our panelists. That is the Honorable Damien Crawford. He's the Minister of State in the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment in Jamaica. He is unable to participate this afternoon due to a touring that he has to do in his constituency to assess the damage done by Hurricane Sandy, which recently passed through Jamaica. He sends his regrets, but we do have two of our panelists that are still here, and we're hopefully going to get another one tuned in shortly. With us, we have Her Honor Senator Kerry-Ann Ifill. She is the President of the Senate of Barbados. And we have Shireen Macmillan. She is the Youth Think Tank member for Grenada and the Commonwealth Youth Program Pan-Caribbean Chair. Welcome, ladies.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So I'll just hand over briefly to each of you to just give a brief introduction of yourselves before we get into today's topic. Shireen, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Khalid. Good afternoon to viewers out there. My name is Shireen Macmillan, and I am the Youth Think Tank representative for Grenada, as well as the Commonwealth Youth Ambassador for Grenada and the Commonwealth Youth Caucus Chair for the Caribbean region. I've been involved in youth advocacy and youth development for many years, particularly through using the avenue of volunteerism for promoting youth development. I have been a voice for young people, listening to their concerns as well as assisting young people in finding solutions to the problems that we face here in the Caribbean. So I'm all about youth development, I'm all about youth empowerment, and I stand charged and ready to promote the whole idea of youth development and youth empowerment in our region. And I see that a key way of getting this done is through volunteerism. So that's a little about me, and back to you, Khalid.
Thank you. Now we're moving to Senator Ifill.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this discussion.
Okay. Can you just tell us a little about yourself, Senator Ifill?
I am the first totally blind female to serve in the upper house of the Chambers of Barbados. I currently hold the position of president, and to date I'm the youngest and first female to hold such a post. I work very fervently in the area of disabilities advocacy, but I've also been connected with youth work, and I'm very much in favor of young people speaking out and having a part and having a say in the activities and the issues surrounding our societies. I think that our youth need to be more involved and more proactive about being a part of our society, and any forum in which we can encourage this is definitely in my area.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator Ifill. So, of course, for everyone who's now tuning in, we have joining us here Her Honor Senator Kerry-Ann Ifill. She's the president, the first female president of the Senate and the youngest, as she just expressed. And we also have Shireen Macmillan, who is the Youth Think Tank member for Grenada, as well as the Commonwealth Youth Program Pan-Caribbean Chair. So today's topic is Caribbean politics an old man's game? I am going to invite our panelists, and we'll start with Senator Ifill. If you can just tell us, some of the persons that are tuned in, what are your thoughts on it? Is Caribbean politics an old man's game? Senator Eiffel.
Funny, listening to your topic chosen for this afternoon, you can take it in a whole set of ways. Old as in older persons, man as in male. And yes, predominantly in the Caribbean, our politics has been centered around older persons and especially males. But more and more as we look at the landscape of politics, things are changing. You're having younger persons, younger prime ministers, young has to be
Okay,
done for them to understand and recognize.
yes. All right, we were just breaking up a little bit, but I think we got most of what you were saying. You were ensuring, well, stating that there are more young people involved in various aspects of politics. That's correct?
Yes, definitely. It's
Right.
improving.
It's improving.
Yes.
And of course, it is very commendable and beneficial that yourself, as the first female president of the Senate here in Barbados, it is something commendable and is moving towards that direction. Shireen, I will now invite you to continue from where Senator Eiffel left off. Do you believe this that
Yes, thank you, Khalid. I really want to agree with Senator Ifield, and I believe that the topic it bears truism and it's in fact factual because when you look at the political arena in the Caribbean, you realize that it's a lot of the older heads. If you take a look at the profiles of politicians and key persons in politics, you would realize that it's a lot of older people. Slowly, I'm realizing in the Caribbean that we're kind of turning tide and we have young people getting involved. We have women getting involved, although I'm seeing quite a lot of older women. But we're seeing changes happening. But when we look at it in the Caribbean, it is really an old man's game. And while I like the topic for discussion today because I want to promote that young people get involved in politics, what I don't like is the reality. And I think what we need to do in the Caribbean is try to not look at it as an old man's game, one, not look at it as a game, two, but look at it as an opportunity whereby young, old, women, men, young people can really make a difference in our region. So the topic for discussion today is true and it's factual because we look at the profiles and we can see that a lot of older people involved in politics, but at the same time it's an opportune time for us to really make a change and make a difference in our region.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shireen. I would, of course, like to welcome those persons that are joining us online. I see there are many comments that are coming in, and we want to invite you to continue to leave your questions and give your comments to us. We will try to have the panelists respond to your questions, and if you want comments raised, we can also raise them here. For those that are having connectivity issues, just please restart your browser and we'll continue going again. So, Shireen and Senator Eiffel, we both raised important points and questions in terms of politics now. It's evolving. We're having more young people and, of course, young women as well becoming more involved in politics. But there's still some semblance of it being something reserved for quote unquote old men. How then do you see we can get more young people involved in politics? In various of our Caribbean countries, we have youth arms of political parties, but how do we get more young people, participating meaningfully into politics? What are your thoughts?
For me, I think what we need to do is to get young people to understand that they do have a role to play. Too many younger persons are saying that, oh, they don't need to vote or they don't need to be involved in the political activities because it doesn't bear any relevance to them. It's not directly impacting on them. Somehow we're missing the opportunity to give them that civic consciousness that they need to understand. So I think a level of awareness needs to be engaged in to heighten their understanding of why it is important for them to be involved. It's not going to suddenly happen at age 40, 50, 60 that you're suddenly going to realize, hey, I need to be involved in this. We need to start from young because it's an old man's game, because these older men, as we see it, got involved in it when they were young, and they've nurtured it in their bosoms for a long time. And we need to get that fervor going in more than just the people that are attracted directly to being in youth arms of politics.
Thank you, Senator Ashford.
Right. Hello? Yes.
Yes.
If we look at the political arena, we realize that a lot of the youth in political parties are the flag bearers of pom-pom girls of the campaign. And I think it really, if we want to see that change, we really need to start off with capacity building with the youth arms of political parties. I'm thinking about organizations that promote democracy, governance, youth participation, and so should use that as an opportunity to build the capacity and strengthen the capacity of young political activists and politicians. And I think by starting off with the youth arms of the political parties and building their capacity to realize, hey, this thing is not only about being a flag bearer, or this is not only about, participating in a campaign, but this is the time for us to lift the bar, step up, and be involved in the decision-making process. And I think it starts off with one, capacity building of young people, letting them see the importance of getting involved in politics, letting them see that, all right, it's my time now, it's our time now to work together to shape the future that we want to see. And it starts off with the youth leaders, the youth councils, the political youth arms, and then from that, if we empower the youth leaders and the youth activists, then they too can empower others to lead and take that stance and get involved in politics. So it starts off with changing the mindset of the young people, and also to changing the mindset of our politicians now, because we need to work in tandem with them. I'm not saying that young people should just take over, but we need to work in tandem, and they should see us as equal partners. They should see us, they should give us the space to be involved in decision making. So it starts off with the change in mindset, the change in how we view politics, and see it as we can work together, young and old, male and female, to make that change.
Okay, thanks, Shireen. It's interesting that you mentioned some of the youth arms and the NYCs, etc. During this morning's discussion on what media says about youth, some of these same issues in terms of young people were raised. However, we do have a comment coming in from Shida B, and it really is speaking a lot to the youth arms. And she is mentioning, or Shida is mentioning, that the youth arms are not very inclusive with young people. If you can maybe share some of your thoughts on that. It also goes on to say that adults and young people are not part of the world with us, but we youth, we are the present, we are the future, and politics cannot have the same face and attitude as it did before. What are your thoughts on that?
While I understand that you don't, it can't have the same face, and I agree, because things are changing. If nothing else, look at the realities of social media, and that means a lot to the younger generation. The older generation think it has as much value, but we all know that it does, because it is a society we live in and the activity it has. However, too often I think that sometimes we think that we must throw out all of the older ways of doing things and embrace the new ones. What it needs to be is an inclusive one, not one where we get rid of one and bring in the other, but one that embraces all the realities and try to make a blend out of it. Now, that is not as easy as it is. It is easy to tear down and rebuild. It's not as easy to renovate. But in a case like this, you need to do renovation. And also, our young people also need to understand that everything doesn't come out and grab you. Sometimes you have to go into things. I always say you can't change anything from the outside. You have to be on the inside to change it. And if you don't go and get involved in it and say, hey, look, we have a voice. You all need to hear our voice. If you're outside saying, oh, they're not going to listen to us, of course they're not going to listen because you're not talking to them. You're not saying it directly to the people that need to hear it. But even when you get inside, it's not going to change automatically. It takes a lot of long work. If we talk to the stalwarts in our political landscape, you'll hear the talk about the fights when they had the riots and when they had the Clement Payne movement in Barbados, when we had the sugar workers riots in such in Trinidad and the other things in the political landscape back in the 40s and 50s and the Eric Williamses and those ones. We know that they did a lot of work. It didn't happen overnight. But sometimes we think of things instantaneous, and if it doesn't happen immediately, it's not happening. That's not the case. We need to keep plugging away at it. But by the same token, we need to build our own platforms as well, our own platforms, and speak on the issues that are directly impacting on us. So a lot of work has to be done. But I do hear what the young lady's saying.
I want to agree with you, Senator Ifield, and I feel the same way. And I feel that as young people, it starts off with us. We really need to be the change that we want to be. And yes, a lot of youth and so they're not inclusive or they're not promoting inclusion. But when we realize that, we should step up and get involved and say, hey, you're not working for me or with me, but you're saying that you're advocating for me and for youth. So I think that we too need to hold them accountable as young people. If we realize that the youth arms are not representing our views, then we need to step up and let our voices be heard. And as I said, it starts off with us as young people. We need to promote our own empowerment. We need to for the case of youth arms and youth councils, we need to strengthen and establish national youth councils or youth arms and so forth. So it starts off with us young people, and we have to be serious about it. We can't just promise off and do nothing about it and say, well, hey, they're not including us. We need to be serious about it, and we must realize that power is not gained, but it's earn. You have to work for it. So it's not about just making that change and saying, yes, we're going to do that. We have to work and build that foundation to achieve what we want to achieve so that Caribbean politics would not be an old man's game.
Okay, so on the same issue with our youth arms and youth councils, what do you think about the notion that youth arms and youth councils, that they're losing their interest? And as such, they're finding different ways of becoming involved and being used in terms of in the political realm and being considered tokenism to some extent. What are your thoughts on those points? Do you think that our youth arms and our youth councils, that they're losing interest and they're being used? They're getting into tokenism essentially. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on this is that yes, some of them may be losing effectiveness, but why is that happening? Is it happening because they're losing the thrust behind them? If they're not having the force put behind them by many shoulders to the wheel, if there's not enough people out there trying to work with them, then it becomes the 23 talking heads there sitting trying to get things done. And if 3 or 4 persons are doing, if you only have people going along their own viewpoints, then nobody else's viewpoints are going to get included. So again, I think the fault falls back in the plate of the people that are saying that they're not representing us. Are you being a part of the process for changing it? And if you are you really doing it in a meaningful and effective way? I've had conversations with many young people, and as soon as they're not getting immediate gratification, they step out of whatever situation, they're stepping out of this forum, they're not involved in that anymore. Oh, I went and spoke to them last month and they didn't hear me. Well, sometimes you have to speak every day and continue talking in order for somebody to hear something from what you're saying.
Okay. I want to
I,
go
I,
ahead,
I
Shu.
can't I can't say that we're losing youth arms and youth councils. They're losing the drive, or they're not doing as much, because recently in a meeting in Jamaica, you had youth council leaders coming together and building up and strengthening their capacities, and finding ways of how they can promote youth and get young people involved and be a true representative of young people. And I am seeing a change, because recently we have started a regional youth council and it's on stream now, and we're looking at ways in really promoting youth and getting young people to participate in the decision making process. So I'm seeing a lot of changes. I'm seeing strides being made, and I just think that what we need as young people is the support from the older heads, from the politicians, from all stakeholders, to continue on that path and make the difference that we want to make. Khalid, I'm not hearing you.
Oh,
I'm
my
not hearing
apologies.
you.
I'll just repeat the question. We've had elections now recently.
I'm still not hearing you clearly.
Senator Eiffel, can you hear?
Yes, I can. I couldn't hear you just now, but now I can.
Okay. Let me repeat
Right,
the
I'm
question.
hearing you now.
So we've now had elections recently, and in Bermuda and Barbados, both countries are about to have elections soon. Can, okay. Senator Eiffel, you still hearing me, right? Senator Eiffel?
Pardon? I didn't catch most of what you said. I'm sorry. All I got to
Oh,
was that we've had elections recently. We will have elections soon in Barbados, but I missed what you
all
said
right.
after that.
I'll just repeat it again. I think we're just having a slight technological challenge, but I think it's sorted out now. Um, we've had elections in St. Lucia recently, and we are about to have elections in Grenada and in Barbados pretty soon. And at times, the campaigns, during the election season can become a bit dirty and personal. Do you think that these type of personal attacks in Caribbean politics turn off young people? It turns them away from even becoming interested in politics in the Caribbean. What are your thoughts?
Uh, I remember early on in my political experience, I was invited to give a speech. And one of the platforms I had to speak on was whether politics is dirty and that kind of thing. And yes, it is a very personal attack in some instances. And I do think that our young people, the culture we live in, we don't embrace that kind of thing anymore. We're more on philosophical topics. We're more about the abstract, the general, the wider issues. But be that as it may, sometimes we have, like I said before, we have to try to marry the two activities. Now, to stop making it personal attacks, we'd all love to see that happen. But at the end of the day, is it going to happen? No, it's not, because some of the persons, that's the way that they understand and they know how to go. We need to strip away that personal from it sometimes and see what is underlying all of that personalization, as we put it. In our political landscape, we know John Brown. We know him. He lives in our community. So we will take things direct when it comes to him. We don't
Mhm.
like, and sometimes we say, oh, we don't want to hear those kinds of negative attacks on people. But you take those out of the game, and then people don't think it has any flavor. There's no spice. The man has no backbone. He hasn't proven himself, and that kind of thing. So while I think it does scare young people away, we need to recognize that's the nature that we've lived with. And if we want to change it, we have to get into it and say, look, I'm really not interested in whether he is this way or she has done that. This is what I want to hear about. But if we just say, oh, I don't, they did personal, too dirty, and they walk away from it, it's not going to change because we haven't been a part of the process.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Shireen, would you like to add anything else?
Khalid, that is quite true, because when speaking to young people and you're encouraging them to get involved in frontline politics and just get involved and let their voices be heard, oftentimes the response is, I don't have time for this. Me? Why me? Like, I'm going to be criticized. I'm inexperienced. And because of what has been happening and the culture, you find that young people generally, they have this fear to want to participate and get involved. And I think what we need to do is start now and try to eliminate all of these challenges or what's making it harder for young people to really get involved. And like I said, it starts off with capacity building and you know, just changing the mindset. And when that is done, then we would see young people stepping up to the plate and getting involved. But yes, there's this fear to really get involved because they're afraid of the criticism and, you know, not having the experience and so forth. But it starts off with a revolutionary change in mindset. And once this happens, I am sure you would see young people really stepping up and making a difference. I'm not hearing you. Not hearing you.
We just want to remind everyone that you can send us your comments, and we will, of course, direct them to the panel or read them out accordingly. And Shireen, you mentioned something very interesting, the process of the, you started to talk about it, the social audit process. And I think that was it was a new step, I think, for an agency like UNDP and for national youth councils and youth leaders who are interested in politics to learn about the social audit process. That workshop was held in Jamaica in September, and it brought together a number of young people facilitated through our regional bureau for Latin America and the Caribbean. And it brought together young people to learn on the social audit process. How do we hold not just our politicians accountable, but our organizations, whether international organizations or non-governmental organizations, how do we hold them more accountable for the resources that they have? So I must say it was very good to see so many young people who had a passion for the social audit process, and it would be good to see how many of it can be recreated in the Caribbean region, since it has been taking off so much in the Latin American continent. Shireen, you wanted to mention something?
Yeah, and Khalid, I want to commend UNDP for that, because that's the kind of that's what we need to start off with. That's the kind of changes that we need to make. And I participated in the workshop, and it was a very engaging and interesting workshop, because you realize that, hey, you don't have to be a senator or a politician and to hold the government accountable, but the simple things you do can be a step, you understand, and getting young people more involved and participating in decision making. And UNDP should really be commended for that, because that's the kind of steps that we need to make, and when we do that, we'd see the changes in our region. So it was a excellent workshop, and it's something that I know that the youth leaders present, they said that they would go back and try to get more young people on board, train them in the area of social auditing, and see how we can use that as an avenue to hold our government accountable and let them really represent us as young people. So it was a really good workshop, and UNDP thumbs up for that.
Thanks, Shireen. All right. So many young people sometimes say that they cannot really see the benefits of being involved. Whether it's being involved because politicians are not really seen as leaders or mentors to them, but for various reasons. What are your thoughts on that? Do you, as a young person, maybe Shiri, maybe you'll be able to answer that question. What do you think? Do you think that our leaders are not mentors?
I wouldn't say that our leaders are not mentors, but what I can say as a young person is that surely they can do more for us as young people. Because when you look at the electorate, you realize that half of the electorate, they're young people. And when the politicians get into power, they don't really advocate or try to find solutions to our problems. And I think that they should realize that they have to do more for the young people. And they should try to be our mentors as much as possible and really keep to their word and really do for young people. Really try to bring solutions to some of the problems that we're having. They really should have our interests at heart. And that is what I want to see as a young person. I want to see governments really having the interests of young people and not just saying that when they're on the campaign trail because they realize that 60% of the electorate are young people, but really getting into politics, getting into office, and really working for us, because you would realize that a lot of the problems that we have in society evolves around young people. There are young unemployment, young people affected the most, health issues, young people again. So we want them that when they get in there, they don't just campaign for us to get our votes, but they really go in there and work for us and work with us and get us involved as well.
But
so yes, they should do more.
Yes, I agree with you on that, but I think too that our young people also have to call them and hold them to account. Not just say you need to do more for us, but constantly remind, we are waiting on you, we are listening for your word. How can we help you to help us better? If we're not putting our shoulder out there and saying, look, we are ready, give us some work, let us help out, we want to be a part of this process too. If we're not asking and begging and pleading and kicking and screaming for it, nobody's going to remember. I work with persons with disabilities, and I constantly tell them that it is us who wear the shoe that know the pinch. Nobody can tell our story the way we can, and tell our story, but issues that directly affect us. It's also about the other issues as well. Let them know that we are interested in what is going on. Let us know that when things are happening in the society, not only look at it from a youth perspective, but if it's an elder care activity, for example, let us be involved in that so they see that we're interested in other things. If we are working along in other areas and other activities, then it's not going to be about us. We're going to be contributing, and people are going to see that we need to give these people, they're working on the other issues as well. And that is what we need to do as well.
Yes, I want to agree with that, because nobody plays the tune better than the piper. And I think that young people should advocate and stand ready to be partners. And I think it starts with us as well. And you're right when you mention that, because we can't just wait for them to do for us or to find solutions to our problems. We need to work with them to find our own solutions as well. So I think it means that young people need to get involved. We need to take action. We need to participate. And that's the role too of the youth councils. The youth councils and youth arms should advocate for young people getting involved, for getting into that space to make the difference.
Great, thank you so much. We have a few comments here that I want to read out before we continue. Janine mentioned that it is important, it was also important for us as young people to agitate more. We have to let the political directorate know we want to see results. I think these are some of the comments that Senator Eiffel was making. Khadija wanted to mention that she agrees with the senator here, and we need to shout and get our voices heard. We must utilize our media and hold our leaders accountable. I also would like to mention a comment here from Shida. She mentioned that many young people, sorry, additionally, there needs to be more interaction with youth on being proper social citizens, but adults also need to be more accountable for their promises. What do you think about getting more young people becoming more active as social citizens? As
Oh,
citizens, how do we get more young
that is
people?
essential. That is essential. If the only time young people are going to speak are on youth issues, eventually people are going to clock out because they're going to say, "Oh, I already know what they're going to say." They're going to say, "Young people need work. Young people need this," and we do need those things. Don't misunderstand. But if you're hearing the young people talking about, "This is what I want to see the West Indies team doing. This is how I want to see support going for housing in my country. This is the issue regarding healthcare. Healthcare needs to, if we are hearing young people and we are hearing them speak intelligibly and knowledgeably about the issues, then we'll say, you know something, I need to tap into the resources of that market because these young people, they got the energy and the strength to do this. Let you know that those ideas ain't sounding too bad. Incorporate
Exactly.
that is how I feel about that. And yes, we need to hold people to their promises.
Yeah, that is true. If we as young people continue to actively participate, not just only speaking on youth issues, then we would find that these political heads will be compelled to change from being dinosaurs to being more attractive and working with young people. So it's we have to look at it from all angles and not just talk about what's affecting us, but talk about the issues and talk about the challenges and let our voices heard. And by doing so, I think they would definitely take us seriously.
Definitely. Because what will happen to is that they will understand that we're not being selfish. The argument is we
Exactly.
have to look at this thing from the broader perspective. We have to look at this on a national forum. It's okay for you all to speak about that and so on, but in the grand scheme of things, we need to put more value on this, that, or the other. But at the end of the day, if you're hearing us talk on these issues and you can't get rid of us because we are weaving ourselves into every facet of society, then you're going to find that they're going to work harder with us because they're going to realize that there's no getting rid of us. There's no getting rid of the young people's voices because they're working on every issue.
Thanks so much. Senator Eiffel, so the Honorable Damian Crawford, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment, who unfortunately is unable to be part of the panel here this afternoon, he recently got into a bit of trouble for some posts that he made via Twitter on his social activities while at the Olympic Games on national duty. So, as a technology savvy young politician, do you think that it's a good thing for politicians to be more engaged in social media?
Yes, I do. I definitely believe that our politicians need to engage with the social media because that is the way we're going now. Tweeting, Facebooking, blogging, whatever else. Those things are vital. But with those things comes social responsibility. If
Mhm.
you are going to be putting yourself out there, remember what image we want to be putting out there. Do you want to be taken seriously? If you want to be taken seriously, you have to be clear about what you're saying about yourself out there because it's that one careless that people may remember. It may be that one thing that you realize that goes out and everybody only sees that one. They don't see on the serious issues. And yes, sometimes you need to let them know that you're human too. And you let your hair down every now and then as well. Because people stop and think, well, that's all we do. We go and sit in meetings all day long. We don't vote and have fun as well. And we do need to have that. But we have to be aware of what the perception is. I'm not aware of exactly the statements that were attributed to the Honorable Minister. So anything I say must not be construed as a criticism or affirmation of what he said. But let us say, for example, you are representing your country at an international forum, and you attend certain social activities, and you're having a good time and whatever else. People back home seeing that, they think, all they go out and do is attend parties and such. I recently had the fortune to attend a conference at UN headquarters. I sat in meetings from 10 in the morning till 6 in the evening. Now, there are no messages going out there on Facebook. There are no pictures of us sitting around and discussing whatever it was we were discussing at the time. But a colleague with me has a picture of me stepping off a carriage in the middle of Times Square at midnight. So you might think, well, all she did is go out there and party. I didn't. I was in meetings all day from morning till evening. But those aren't the things. So we need, if we're putting out the pictures in Times Square, we need to put out the pictures and the messages and talk about what went on in the meetings, the things we can talk about, sharing how we are working out there. So, like I said, with the whole social media comes social responsibility.
Thank you. All right, I have one little teaser here. So politics is sometimes seen as a very elitist activity. How can a normal, quote-unquote, young person get ahead in political representation? How can they break the mold of this supposedly elitist nature and get involved in politics?
I don't know why we would think it's an elitist thing in the Caribbean. Because if we look at the backgrounds of most of our political activists, these are people that came through the grassroots, came through the ranks, that work, that have working class mothers and fathers. We have the rank and we have people represented from every area. But even outside of that, if we're looking at academic elitism and that kind of thing, what we need to do is stop looking. I will again step back to my issue of disability. Now, people look at disability and they think, well, okay, you can't do this and you cannot do that and so on and so forth. My success in life has come from the fact that I don't accept that. I don't accept that as a blind person I'm not supposed to learn to swim. So every Saturday morning I go to swimming class at 9 o'clock at the beach. People say, aren't you afraid? What am I to be afraid of? Other people are doing it. I'm doing it too. I'm trying to learn to do something for myself. And that is what you have to do. If you want to do it, don't accept that people don't want to include you. Go and work for it. Let yourself get out there and let people hear you. And more than that, I think some of our politicians, they also too need to be frank about where they came from and some of the challenges. I have one colleague who speaks of the fact that he came from a very rural background and that he lived, in the era when children went to school without shoes and those kinds of things. Now, by no stretch of anybody's imagination can he be considered coming from a particular grouping in society. He may have risen to that now, but he's not afraid to tell you where he came from. And that is what we need more people to understand. You may be seeing the product now, but you need to see where it was manufactured.
Okay. Shireen, you have anything you would like to add?
I definitely agree with you. And in the Caribbean, I don't think it's like that really, because when you look at the key players, you realize that they came from grassroots and trade unions and youth councils and all of that. And I really think it boils down to, and Senator Ifield made that point, that they need to be honest and let people know how it started. And by doing so, and by being that positive role model and, telling your story as it is, then you find more people would not be so afraid to want to be a part of it. And young people shouldn't accept the fact that, okay, you say it's elitist, it shouldn't end there. You should say, well, I can't get involved. Politics, when you're in government, you're supposed to work for all stakeholders, all citizens, advocate, do what you have to do for the betterment of the country, for that common good. And by just having that, you should realize that, no, it's not about elitists. It's about who can get in there and get the job done. And the normal man can do so. Anybody can do so. So it's really about determination and commitment. If you really want to get in politics, then you should just go for it. You shouldn't accept, no, this is not for me. You should join NGOs. You should join civil society that participate in democracy and good governance. And so you should join watchdog and organizations, all of that. And it starts off with you. So you have to believe that you can do it. And once you do that, the sky is your limit. So it starts off with the individual.
Definitely.
Thank you, Shireen. So we do have an additional comment from Janine. She says that it's important for leaders to use social media as pulse checks. So we often see citizens expressing their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with a particular issue. And since social media is used by the private sector as a way of engaging with their customers, the same can be applied across all spheres, including the political sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, using it as a pulse check?
It is a pulse check because, as I said, a lot of young people, let's take the BlackBerry, for example. Everybody has BB Messenger that has a BlackBerry, and people are BB messaging this body, and they're sending out BB broadcasts, and they're doing all kinds of things. So yes, we get a sense of what is going on out there. A few months ago, somebody sent out a message saying that there was some storm brewing or some such, and it took ages and ages for people to realize that this is not happening. It was just some sort of hoax. So yes, it is a pulse, but we cannot bury our heads and think it is the only. Our young people also need to realize that sometimes we need to get our faces off of the Facebook, get our noses out of this Twitter and so on, and get out there and feel the pulse on the ground. It's not only the internet and the World Wide Web landscape. We also need to know what's on the physical landscape out there, because sometimes we may get out of touch and out of tune with what is in society. Again, I go back to what I was saying earlier. It needs to be an inclusive approach, a blending of all of the activities. The social media, yes, our young people are involved in that, but our young people have to realize that some of our older members are not as up on that. So we need to interact with them. Putting an ad out on Facebook is not enough. We need to go out there. Yes, if you're having a youth activity, and you're trying to encourage young people to come, putting the flyer on Facebook is a fantastic way of encouraging. But if you want to involve all the persons in it, that's not the only forum you can use. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, thanks, Senator Ifill.
I want to agree to that. It is a pulse check. And while social media promotes digital participation and so on, you scream and you rant and you rave and you let your voice heard on Facebook, it doesn't end there. It just really begins there. Because as young people, we should also use our networks and community-based networks to really build that synergy and let our voices be heard. So I think, yes, it's a good pulse check, but it's not enough. We need to go there in our communities. We need to go there with the watchdog organizations. We need to do our social audits. We need to take a wider approach, as Senator Ifill mentioned, and really get involved. So it's just an avenue, and it's an avenue that we can use and continue to use, but we really need to do more and realize too that a lot of young people still not on Facebook, still not using Twitter, still not on BlackBerry. So we need to include them too in our advocacy, and it would take going out into the communities and really fostering relationships with others, other organizations, other NGOs, other young people, and building that kind of alliance to make that difference. So it's just really the start, but it's a good start, and it has its advantages.
Thanks, Shireen. Thanks, Senator Eiffel. Last day, I had an opportunity to have a chat with a teacher from St. Vincent while I was working there for a little bit, and we were discussing the concept of, you know, students, children, young people not becoming as actively involved in civics or Caribbean governance or those type of issues that are affecting their own community. So let's abstract and take out politics, for example. We'll actually look at the areas of governance um, and Caribbean civics. And she mentioned that, you know, years before it was something that was taught in school as part of social studies, etc., etc. What are your thoughts? Do you think that maybe we need to restart in some cases, in some schools that may have taken it off? What do you think about maybe starting back some sort of civic type education as part of social studies curriculum or whatever it may be in our schools across the Caribbean region?
Not just
Senator
civic
Hill?
studies, but civic involvement.
Yes.
Give them a feel for what it is out there, letting people realize that there's more than just your own existence, not just learn about it. I remember my first taste of political life was when I was in second form at school, and we were taken to the House of Parliament to sit in an actual sitting. You got to meet some of the politicians and so on, and after that, you put a feel to the place. You need to get some active involvement in those things for our young people and our children to realize that there is a reality to this thing. I have a 12-year-old cousin, and the day that I was elected as president of the Senate, I took him to Parliament, and that child was a part of history. He knows what it is to be involved in this kind of thing, and that is what we need to see more of. So yes, I do think that we need to introduce it into the schools, but we need to take it out of the schools, not just make it a book learning. It has to be a real learning where you understand, translate it into reality.
And that is an excellent point, because I too can relate to that, because when my dad was involved in politics and when he became a senator, I remember going into Parliament too, and you get in this feel like, yeah, I really want to do this. And I think when you have people, young people getting like as early as primary school involved in these kind of things, then you really see the change, because then they're in touch with reality, and then they could say, well, yes, I want to do this, and by doing so they can empower other young people, students like themselves, to want to take the forefront and want to get involved. So it's good to do it in school, as yes, to read about it in the books, but it's very important to really get the hands-on feel and really get to see what it's like. And I think that's what we need to probably do in our schools, bring that back. And if we do, we would see a lot of changes in our region. We would see young people stepping up to the plate, because it starts off from very early. You have your dreams very early, and I think by doing so, we can really change the mindset of a lot of young people, of a lot of children, to get involved in governance and democracy and so. So I agree with that, and I think we really should go back to civics and civics engagement, involvement.
Thank you. We have approximately 7 minutes remaining, and so may probably take about 2 more questions before we wrap up. And I have one here right now, and it's in relation to the current US presidential elections. I'm not sure how many of you have friends who are very much interested in participating in following the US presidential elections. But when it comes to Caribbean elections, it's a total different thing. Even an election in your own country, for example, some of our young people are not as participatory as they should. So hinging on the same topic of citizen engagement and civic education, what What are your thoughts on that, Shireen or Senator Eiffel? How much should our Caribbean youth, make comparisons between the presidential elections and their involvement in it, even though they may not necessarily have voting rights? For example, they are actively involved in it, following presidential debates online, whereas
Well, I
when it
think
comes to our Caribbean elections, it's not the same thing. Senator Eiffel, what are your thoughts on that?
we don't have the same flair. We don't have the same drama, glitz, glamour that's associated with the American political system. And so those are the things that are attracting people. We don't, so because those things are attracting people and they look so, you know, attractive and appealing, that's why our people are getting it. So when we're doing it here, when we talk about setting up a platform, we having open air rallies and discussions and what's not. It's not as appealing aesthetically, I believe. However, that being said, maybe we need to take a page out of their books and see, put a Caribbean spin on some of the things that they're doing in the political landscape. What we also need to do is, because of the fact we watch a lot of American television, we read a lot of literature from out of the US, a lot of the things that we interact with on a daily basis are based in that country. And so sometimes we are more familiar with that situation than we are with our own. So we need, again, if we start back from in the schools and getting our people to recognize what our system is like and what our value structure is and where our emphasis is, that would also help as well. So I think we need to blow our trumpets a little louder in the Caribbean when it comes to our political debates and so on, to get our young people actively involved, as well as embrace some of the lessons that we can learn from our US colleagues.
Shireen, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with that. And oftentimes you see young people being so interested in what's happening out there than what's happening here at home in our region. And I think the media has a part to play. I mean, they if you don't have something and it's not in front of you all the time and you're not aware of it all the time, then you tend not to appreciate it. And I think it really boils down to the media, to organizations as well, to letting young people know about our political arena, to know of the aspects, to know of what's happening, and then by doing so, they would be able to appreciate it more. Because oftentimes you hear young people say, well, I know more of what's happening in America than what's happening here at home in Grenada or in Barbados. And they say that too because they don't know. And I think it starts off with the media, it starts off with our politicians as well, and it starts off with young people too. They need to get involved, and then they would know, and then they would learn to appreciate. So it's really a series of approaches that needs to happen, to get young people to be more interested, and it starts off with us. We need to mind our business at home as well. So I think as young people, we really need to get more involved, and by getting more involved, then we will learn to appreciate it and to want to be more involved.
Thank you very much, Shireen. Okay, so we have a few more minutes, and I have possibly a question that's coming in. Um, Speaking of debates, do you think that a more structured debates, like what we see in the U.S. Presidential elections, that will attract more people or more young people into politics?
Yes,
Senator Eichel?
yes and no. We need to recognize American is American, Caribbean is Caribbean. We cannot wholesale adopt, because if we try to do it, you are going to try to transplant a plant that ain't going to grow because we don't have the same soil. And just because that's the way they do it doesn't mean we have to do it. That is not to say that we can't incorporate some of it into our thing. Are having those those kinds of debates part of our landscape? Is there any value to it? Can we make any value of it here in the Caribbean? Perhaps we can. Okay, good. Let us set up some platforms and do it that way. We have had a couple of those in the past. But even when we provide it, are our young people going to sit and enjoy it? Or are they going to be caught up in, sometimes I find we sneer so much at what is homegrown, and we swallow hook, line, and sinker what is coming from outside. So even if we do adopt it, are our young people going to sit down and watch those debates with the same fervor and enthusiasm as they're taking in the American debates? Are they? I don't know. If they are, then it could be a good thing. If they're not, why not? What are we doing? Why are we being hypocritical as young people? We're saying we want it, and when it's there, we're not using it. Why not?
Okay, thank you.
I would say that I don't appreciate. Well, I don't agree with the adopting the structured debates. I mean, it can be done, but I don't feel like we should continue just trying to be like America,
Exactly.
copying the things that they're doing. Because I mean, if we continue doing that, we'll always be doing that. And remember, we're not America. So I think what we need to do is find ways to make it more appealing and more interesting to young people. And it starts off with young people. You have to say what is it you want in terms of making it more appealing and more interesting to you, because only you would know what appeals to you and in what form and format. So, I mean, while you want to probably copy the structured debates, which is good because you can get a lot of information and it's a healthy discussion, we need to find our own Caribbean flair. We need to find our own Caribbean flavor. And in doing so, then we would make it attractive for our own, because that's something that we would be able to identify with. And it wouldn't just be, oh, because America is doing it. So I think we really need to find ways to get young people involved, and the young people too must start thinking of ways that, I mean, how we can put the messages of what's happening in the political arena to make it more interesting, so that they become interested and they become involved, and so forth. So it starts off with us. It really starts off with us.
Okay, thank you so much. I will have to take final responses and final notes, because I think we've now run out of time. I must clearly thank both Senator Eichel. Thank you so much for participating in this discussion topic, and thank you also for being part of the panel discussion.
Thank you, Khalid.
Special thanks also
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to have been a part of the course.
Okay.
In closing, I just want to say that I want to encourage young people to really get involved. And I like the youth saying, are you in or are you out? And I think young people, we need to become interested in what's happening. We need to become innovative. We need to become innovators. We need to get involved. And it starts off with us. And no longer should we complain about, well, our politicians not doing this or not doing that. We should come together and work with each other to build and to shape the future that we want to see. And it involves getting involved in youth organizations, starting your own, going into the community, working with your youth councils, your youth think tank representative, and really working to make that difference. And it starts off with us. So I want to encourage young people to go out there, to let your voices be heard, partner with organizations, with groups, for instance, the Youth Think Tank, and other youth youth networks, and really work to making that difference. And the sky is our limit. We just need to stand up, be counted, participate in elections as much as possible, get others involved, and just really be empowered. And you would realize that the amount of change we would see, and our governments too, and the politicians would respect us more, and we would get that power that we want. And also too, it's not about just youth taking over, but it's youth working with politicians, becoming partners, because you realize that with age comes wisdom, and it's all about working with them as well. So in your parliament with 20 seats, let's try as young people to get involved, get engaged, get active, and get probably 4 or 5 of that 20 seats. So it starts off with us, and I think we can do it as young people.
Okay,
And the time is now.
We do have to run because we've run out of time. And I must say thank you to all our in questions and comments. Thank you for joining us on the portal. I must also again for the Honorable Minister, Damien Crawford, to be part of the panel.